The Galactic Council chamber was a place of constant motion. Voices of dozens of species blended into a chorus of debate, bargaining, and ceremony. The air shimmered faintly with the warmth of artificial suns that illuminated the vast dome above. At the center of the great circular room sat the ring of delegate platforms, each marked with a crest representing a member civilization. One platform, however, remained unlit. For 93 standard years, that seat had belonged to Earth. Its emblem, a simple depiction of a blue and white sphere, rested in quiet neglect. The Council sent invitation after invitation when humanity achieved faster-than-light travel, and again when their colonies spread to nearby systems. Yet not once had a representative arrived. It had become a running joke among some of the older members. "The humans are probably still arguing over who gets to speak," one delegate once whispered to another. Others claimed Earth had never truly united, that their presence in interstellar space was a fragile illusion. A few suspected arrogance, that the humans believed they did not need the Council at all. But for most, the empty seat was simply background. The galaxy was large, and not every species was eager to join a chamber full of political games. Then the sensors on the Council's capital world detected something unusual. At first, it seemed like a trickle of inbound traffic from deep space, faint blips on the long-range scans scattered across several vectors. Within hours, the trickle became a flood. Hundreds of signatures appeared, their configurations unfamiliar to the database. They were not merchant convoys or exploration flotillas. They moved in disciplined formations, each group converging toward the capital at precise intervals. By the time the security fleet was fully deployed, the count had reached nearly 1,000 vessels. The Council's military command hesitated. In recorded history, no power had ever approached the capital with such a show of force. Standard procedure was to scramble defensive pickets and open immediate communications. A hail was sent in all major galactic trade tongues, in high band and low band frequencies, along with tight beam laser signals. Only silence came back. Hours later, the ships emerged from FTL into the capital system. What unfolded on every sensor display was a formation so exact it could have been drawn with a ruler. Rows of colossal carriers, flanked by cruisers and destroyers, with smaller craft patrolling the edges like shepherds guarding a flock. Each vessel bore the same deep silver-gray hull plating, reflective enough to catch the light of the system's twin suns. In the center of the formation drifted a single, massive vessel, easily the size of a small moon. Its hull was smooth and unbroken, save for subtle seams where weapons bays and docking ports might lie hidden. The command center of the Council's defense fleet fell into a tense hush. Admiral Sarek of the Dreth Confederacy finally spoke. "They're human." The word carried a weight that none could dismiss. Within moments, a transmission crackled across every secure channel. The voice was calm, neither demanding nor deferential. "Galactic Council," it began. "Humanity acknowledges your invitations. We have arrived. No threat, no request, just a statement." From the orbital control stations, the sight of the fleet was almost unreal. The humans had not sent a handful of diplomats escorted by a ceremonial guard. They had arrived in force, not firing, not advancing beyond high orbit, but with a presence that could not be ignored. Across the Council chambers, murmurs rose. Some delegates demanded immediate talks. Others called for the humans to be ordered away until their intent was clear. A few, older and more cautious, simply watched the live feed of the silent fleet and wondered how long Earth had been preparing for this day. The empty seat in the chamber still sat unlit. But for the first time in nearly a century, every delegate in the Galactic Council looked at it and waited to see who would take it. The Council convened an emergency session before the orbital echoes of the human fleet's arrival had even faded from the sensors. The chamber was quieter than usual. There were no side conversations, no idle glances at personal data displays. Every delegate sat forward, eyes drawn to the central projection hovering above the ring of platforms. A slow rotation of the massive central human vessel, its surface glinting in the light of the capital's twin suns. Council Speaker Iralen of the Sarathi Alliance tapped her talons gently on the control panel before her. We have received an acknowledgement from Earth. We will now invite them to present their envoy. A communication request was sent. It was answered almost immediately. The projection shifted. The image of the warship faded, replaced by a figure, seated at a simple metal desk in a room with dark walls. The individual wore no ornate robes or insignia, only a high-collared uniform in deep navy blue. The flag of Earth hung behind them, a field of white stars on a midnight background, orbit paths etched faintly in silver. I am Admiral Elias Vance, United Terran Fleet Command, the man said. His voice was calm, his gaze steady. I speak on behalf of Earth and her colonies. Speaker Iralen inclined her head slightly. Admiral Vance, your fleet's presence has caused considerable concern. Many here question the intent of arriving in such numbers. This is not standard diplomatic protocol. Vance gave a faint nod. We are aware. Our absence from previous assemblies was deliberate. For decades, Earth has observed the Council from afar. We have listened through open broadcasts and intercepted transmissions to your debates and your decisions. We chose to remain silent. Until now. A ripple moved through the delegates. Some shifted uncomfortably. Others leaned forward with renewed attention. The speaker's voice took on a measured tone. And why choose now? Vance's gaze did not waver. Because the time for listening has ended. We have watched the Council's policies shape entire sectors, sometimes for good, sometimes for harm. We have seen disputes settled through trade and others through force. Earth has learned much from these observations, but learning without participation has limits. We now come not as students, but as equals. The word hung in the air. Equals. From the Dreth Confederacy's platform, Admiral Sarek's representative leaned forward. You bring warships to declare equality? That is a dangerous statement, human. Vance's lips curved in the smallest of smiles. We bring what we have built. These ships are not here to threaten. They are here to show that we are capable of standing on our own. Respect among equals is not granted. It is earned. The tension in the chamber thickened. Delegates whispered into private comms, no doubt consulting their governments. A few were already drafting proposals to limit human influence. Speaker Iralen's voice cut through the murmur. You understand the implications of this arrival, Admiral. The Council functions through trust and cooperation. An armed fleet in high orbit strains that trust. Vance inclined his head slightly. Then let our actions restore it. We will withdraw our fleet beyond your system's outer marker if that is your condition. But know this. Earth will not come here unguarded, not in this age. We have seen too much of the galaxy to arrive otherwise. For several moments, silence held the chamber. The delegates exchanged glances, each calculating what this meant for their alliances and territories. Finally, Iralen spoke. Very well. The Council will recess for one standard cycle to deliberate. Admiral Vance, you will remain in orbit until summoned. This assembly will decide if Earth is to be granted formal representation. The projection cut back to the slow rotation of the human flagship. In the viewing galleries above the chamber, journalists whispered into recording devices, transmitting the news across the galaxy. The human fleet had not fired a single shot, yet its arrival had already shifted the balance of the Council. In orbit, the 1,000 ships held position, silent and steady. And aboard the flagship, Admiral Vance stood at the great observation window, watching the capital world's surface gleam beneath him. He knew the council would argue through the night. That was the way of politics. But he also knew one unshakable truth. Earth's era of silence was over. The council chamber might have gone dark for recess, but the city beneath it never slept. Its towers glittered like crystal under the twin moons, streets buzzing with 1,000 different species moving through the neon-lit avenues. Within one of the taller spires, in a quiet lounge reserved for high-ranking envoys, Admiral Elias Vance sat across from an alien whose very presence would have drawn a crowd anywhere else. "Your fleet's arrival has disrupted the predictable order of things," said Minister Larash of the Arindran Union. The minister's voice was like wind through hollow stone. "I imagine some will resent you for it. Others may see opportunity." Vance studied the alien carefully. The Arindran were not known for direct offers. They were traders, subtle in their diplomacy, valuing information as much as currency. "Opportunity works both ways," Vance replied. "You called for this meeting. What is it you want?" Larash's eyes, 4 of them, arranged in 2 vertical pairs, blinked in slow sequence. "The Union controls 3 critical slipstream gates between your colonies and the inner council worlds. We could offer unrestricted passage, trade privileges, in exchange for certain assurances." The Admiral leaned back in his chair. "Assurances? Like? That you will support our next motion before the Council. A minor matter. Territorial resource rights in an unclaimed sector. Small but symbolically important." Vance's lips pressed into a thin line. It was already beginning. Factions within the Council saw Earth's arrival as leverage. If the humans sided with one bloc over another, entire policy shifts could follow. "I'll consider it," he said, finally. "But Earth won't be bought with single concessions. Our position will be built on long-term trust, not sudden trades." Larash inclined his head. "Understandable. But the Council is rarely patient, Admiral. I suggest you decide, quickly." As the minister departed, Vance caught the reflection of another figure watching from the far side of the lounge, a tall, silver-skinned envoy from the Karan Dominion. They turned away the moment his gaze met theirs. Back aboard the flagship, the situation was no calmer. Commander Reyes entered Vance's quarters with a secure tablet. "You'll want to see this, sir. We've intercepted at least a dozen encrypted transmissions from council members to private recipients. Half of them mention offers to Earth." Vance scanned the summaries. Trade routes, military pacts, technology exchanges, all dangled as incentives for human alignment. "They're testing the waters," Reyes said, "seeing if we'll play one side against the other." The Admiral set the tablet down. "And if we do, we become just another piece in their game. That's not why we came here." Reyes hesitated. "Then why did we come here, sir? Beyond the official line." Vance looked out the viewport at the capital world's shimmering night. "Because decisions made in that chamber shape the lives of billions, and until now, we've had no voice in them. That ends here. But if we want a seat, we need to show we're more than a fleet of ships. We have to show we belong." Elsewhere, in the city, not all meetings were as restrained as Vance's. A small delegation from the Dreth Confederacy had gathered in a shadowed conference room with a trio of human naval officers. "You have strength," one Dreth commander said bluntly. "That is respected among our kind, but strength unused is seen as weakness. If the Council delays your admission, why not remind them what Earth is capable of?" The humans exchanged glances. "We came here to avoid conflict, not start one," said Lieutenant Hale. The Dreth leaned forward, eyes glinting. "Sometimes the threat of conflict is enough." The conversation ended without agreement, but the seed had been planted. Whispers that not all in the human delegation were committed to patience. By the next morning, Rumors were already circulating through the Council's data feeds. Humans making secret deals, alien factions courting Earth's allegiance, and even suggestions that the fleet in orbit could tip the balance of power overnight. In the midst of it all, Admiral Vance prepared for the official recall to the chamber. Whatever. The Council decided today he knew the easy part was over. From here on, every word, every pause, every gesture would be measured against the 1,000 silent ships hanging above the capital world. The great doors of the Galactic Council chamber groaned open, their motion guided by invisible grav lifts. Delegates filtered back to their positions, the low hum of side conversations weaving through the vaulted air. Admiral Vance stepped inside at a measured pace, flanked by Commander Reyes and 2 members of Earth's diplomatic corps. The chamber itself felt older this time, as if centuries of political tension hung thicker in the air than before. The presiding chair, a towering figure from the crystalline Atherin species, called the session to order. We resumed deliberations on the question of Earth's inclusion into this body. As agreed, the human delegation will now address the assembly. All eyes turned toward Vance. His image appeared on the massive holoscreens encircling the chamber, capturing every detail of his posture and expression. "Representatives of the Council," Vance began, his voice calm but carrying. "We have been absent from these gatherings for over a century. Not from ignorance, but from choice. We believed that until we could stand among you as equals, we had no right to take a seat in this hall. That day has come." Murmurs rippled across the room. Some were approving, others skeptical. "Humanity does not seek dominion here," he continued. "We seek a place where our voice may join yours in shaping the peace and prosperity of this galaxy. Our fleet above is not a threat. It is a statement that we are prepared to defend our role, just as we will defend the safety of this Council's collective order." He paused, letting the words settle. The Karan envoy who had watched him in the lounge the night before shifted slightly, antennae tilting forward. Vance's closing line was deliberate. "We ask for membership not as supplicants, but as partners." He stepped back, and the chamber erupted into debate. Delegates spoke in rapid bursts, some praising Earth's directness, others warning that such a massive fleet in orbit represented coercion. That was when the unexpected opposition revealed itself. From the far sector of the chamber, a tall, cloaked figure rose. The hood slipped back to reveal the ridged, shadow-marked face of Councillor Threx of the Velun Sovereignty. His voice was smooth, but each syllable carried weight. "The human envoy speaks of partnership," Threx said, "but arrives with a war armada greater than any single member world commands. If this is the manner in which they approach diplomacy, then what can we expect when disagreements arise? Will 1,000 ships appear above every world they dispute with?" The chamber quieted, the accusation cutting through the air like static. Threx pressed on. "Earth has not been here to contribute to the shared burdens of the Council. The security patrols, the trade enforcement, the relief missions. And yet they expect immediate inclusion? No. Let them first prove themselves over decades, as others have done." Several delegates nodded in agreement, others frowned, sensing the political maneuver behind the speech. Vance stepped forward again, unshaken. "Councillor Threx raises a fair question. What will humanity do when disagreements arise? We will do what all members of this council should do. Speak first, act last, and never forget the cost of conflict. Our fleet is here because history has taught us to be ready, but readiness is not aggression." The chair gestured for order, but the momentum of the debate had shifted into a sharper tone. Proposals began to circulate: conditional membership, probationary terms, even temporary denial until Earth could earn its place. From the observer's balcony, Minister Lorash of the Arindran Union watched with faint amusement. For every challenge Earth faced, a new possibility for alliance or rivalry unfolded. and Larash was already calculating how to use it. By the time the session adjourned for the day, no decision had been reached. But the council's factions were moving quickly now, their lines of communication alive with offers, threats, and whispered plans. As Vance left the chamber, Commander Reyes leaned close. "They're not just debating us anymore, sir. They're debating what the galaxy looks like with us in it." The Admiral gave a slow nod. "Then it's time we show them." The following morning, the council chamber was buzzing long before the gavel strike. News feeds across the galaxy had replayed snippets of Admiral Vance's speech alongside Councillor Threx's pointed objections. The narrative was split down. The middle: bold newcomers or dangerous opportunists. Vance entered quietly this time, his uniform immaculate but without the subtle flourishes of the previous day. There was no grand announcement, no preamble. He simply walked to his station, set a small datapad on the desk, and waited for the chair to open the floor. When granted the speaking turn, he didn't begin with rhetoric. "Before this session, proceeds," Vance said. "I'd like to submit an operational record from the fleet currently stationed in orbit." The chamber's holoscreens lit up, projecting a live feed from one of Earth's Titan-class hospital vessels. Rows of advanced medical pods were visible, their sleek surfaces reflecting cool white light. Inside them, dozens of beings, from half a dozen different species, lay in recovery. "These," Vance continued, "are survivors from the relief operation conducted by our fleet over the past 24 hours. A ripple of surprise moved through the chamber. Commander Reyes, still planetside, had personally overseen the mission. Using Earth's long-range scanning arrays, the fleet had detected a catastrophic reactor failure on a merchant convoy 3 parsecs away. Without waiting for approval from the Council, Earth had dispatched rescue craft, secured the damaged vessels, and evacuated the injured. The holo shifted to a scene aboard the warship Resolute. Engineers and medical staff, human and alien alike, worked side by side to stabilize the convoy's systems. The voice of a rescued captain came through the feed, trembling but clear. "We thought we were gone. Then the humans appeared." Vance let the image speak for a long moment before continuing. "We did not come here to watch from orbit while lives were at risk. This is what our fleet is for. Not intimidation, but readiness. And readiness is only as valuable as the actions it enables." A few delegates exchanged quick glances. Idaya was the Karin envoy who broke the silence. "You mobilized in hours? The convoy was outside Council patrol jurisdiction," Vance nodded. "Which is why we acted. If we can save lives without waiting for committee votes, we will." Councillor Threx rose again, but his tone was more measured now. "And if your intervention had caused diplomatic complications? Then we would have addressed them," Vance replied evenly. "But I suspect there is no greater diplomatic failure than allowing avoidable deaths simply because help was inconvenient. It wasn't a victory speech, but it didn't need to be." The chamber's energy had shifted. The delegates from the affected convoy's trade region conferred quietly, then requested to speak in favor of Earth's provisional membership. From the upper tiers, Minister Larash watched with narrowed eyes. Earth had just rewritten the conversation. Instead of debating whether their fleet was a threat, the Council was now asking how many crises they might prevent. When the session recessed, a small group of delegates approached Vance in the corridor. They represented worlds from the outer spirals, where Council patrols were sparse and piracy was an ever-present risk. "We've been asking for more protection for years," one delegate said. "You've shown in a day what the Council hasn't, delivered in decades." Vance didn't make promises, and he only said, "We will do what we can, where we can." But he knew the momentum was shifting. Allies were quietly stepping forward. Still, he wasn't naive. For every delegate impressed by Earth's action, there were others who would see it as a calculated stunt. Threx's faction would already be framing it that way, warning of the precedent Earth might set by acting without formal approval. That night, as the fleet hung in silent formation above the capital world, Reyes sent a private message to Vance. Rescue teams report all survivors. Stable. Also, our interceptors picked up encrypted comm traffic. Someone's moving fast to organize a countervote. Vance stared at the stars beyond the viewport. The council was far from convinced, but today, at least, they'd seen more than words. 2. Days after the rescue operation, the council chamber was locked in procedural debates over the limits of independent action. Words filled the air, but outside the marble halls, a far more pressing reality was unfolding. The warning reached the Resolute's command deck in the early hours of the cycle. Commander Reyes stood over the tactical display, frowning at the grainy sensor returns. A cargo hauler had gone silent in one of the main hyperspace corridors, its last broadcast a distorted mayday before the signal collapsed. "That route's supposed to be secure," said Lieutenant Hale, running diagnostics. "Council patrols logged it clear last week." Reyes studied the signal patterns. "Whatever hit them isn't a stray meteor. That's weapons interference. Tight beam the Admiral. Wake him if you have to." Within minutes, Admiral Vance was on the line. "Details? Sparse," Reyes admitted, "but enough to suspect an organized ambush. The hauler's registry shows mixed species crew. And sir, this lane feeds directly into the capital's supply chain." The decision came fast. "Assemble a task group. No fanfare, no council announcements. If this is what I think it is, we'll find out before it reaches the headlines." By the time the fleet's smaller escorts were in position, the hyperspace corridor was eerily empty. Then the distortion fields flared like shimmering oil across space, and 5 raider craft decloaked in perfect formation. Hale swore under his breath. "Not pirates. They're too disciplined." Reyes kept her voice steady. "They've got military training. Bring targeting arrays online, but hold fire. I want comms first." The lead raider hailed them with a voice filtered through layers of static. "This is not your territory. Turn back or be reduced to debris," Reyes replied evenly. "You've attacked a vessel carrying civilians under council registry. That's a violation of interstellar law. Stand down and prepare for boarding." The only answer was weapons-locked tones. The escort ships responded instantly, shields flaring as they took the first volley. The battle was short and surgical. Earth's ships moved with precision, disabling engines instead of destroying hulls. In less than 7 minutes, the raiders were drifting, their power systems offline. As boarding teams moved in, the source of the threat became clear. The raiders weren't random marauders. They carried insignia linked to the Vorak Combine, a breakaway faction that had clashed with council patrols for years, but had never been caught this deep in secured space. That fact alone meant one thing: they had help from inside. By the time the hauler's crew was transferred to medical, Vance was en route to the council with evidence packets. The chamber's mood shifted the instant the holo projections lit up. Footage of the ambush, tactical breakdowns of the engagement, and most damning of all, the captured Vorak leader's partial confession. "We didn't expect your kind to respond so quickly," the prisoner had admitted under questioning. "We were told the corridor would be unmonitored for at least a cycle." The room erupted in questions. Who had told them? Which delegate's world stood to gain from such interference? Vance didn't speculate aloud, but the implication was impossible to ignore. There was a leak in the council's own security protocols. "Yesterday you debated the dangers of independent action," Vance said, his voice steady but carrying through the uproar. "Today you see the danger of inaction. If we had waited for a committee vote, every soul on that hauler would be gone, and the raiders would still be in the lanes." Some delegates still bristled, but others were leaning forward, their resistance softening in the face of hard evidence. Even Minister Lorash, ever the political tactician, appeared thoughtful rather than dismissive. After the session, Reyes forwarded a secure report to Vance. "We traced the Vorak approach vector. They used a coded jump beacon manufactured on the capital world." Vance read the words twice, then set the datapad down. The fleet had arrived in orbit, prepared for skepticism and scrutiny. They hadn't expected to find a conspiracy coiled inside the heart of the council itself. The council chamber felt different that morning. The usual murmured conversations were absent. Instead, delegates sat in taut silence, glancing toward the dais where the speaker of the council, a tall, silver-scaled felar named Vorus, adjusted, his notes with a deliberate calm. Admiral Vance and Commander Reyes entered together, escorted by a pair of station guards. Their presence, unannounced yet undeniably purposeful, drew every eye. Vorus began the session with formalities, but the shift came quickly. "Admiral Vance," he said, "you have brought evidence of troubling events." Vance stepped forward, loading a secure data crystal into the chamber's main display. The hologram bloomed to life, showing a rotating image of a jump beacon, its casing pristine, its markings unmistakable. "This device," Vance began, "was found aboard one of the captured Vorak vessels. It was used to bypass secure hyperspace lanes, placing them directly into a major supply route." Gasps rippled through the chamber as the image zoomed in on the serial code. Reyes spoke next, her voice steady. "Manufactured on the capital world, which means someone within the council's infrastructure supplied it." A wave of murmurs broke out, some delegates immediately protesting, others whispering to aides. Vorus leaned forward. "Commander, you are making a serious accusation." "No," Reyes said, locking eyes with him. "I'm presenting facts. The accusation will make itself." Vance brought up a second holo, a star map showing the raiders' entry point and escape vector, overlaid with transit data. "These corridors are under constant surveillance, yet this attack went unchallenged until we arrived. Either your monitoring systems failed entirely or someone told them when to strike." The chamber erupted. Several delegates stood, calling for inquiries, others demanding the human fleet leave until an internal investigation concluded. It was Minister Lorash of the Zaltri who broke the chaos. "If the Admiral's data is accurate, then the humans have done what our own patrols failed to do. Intercept the threat and bring us proof. To dismiss them now is to ignore the very danger we claim to defend against." Silence fell again, heavier than before. Vorus's gaze moved between the humans and the restless delegates. "Admiral Vance, what do you propose?" Vance's tone was controlled but unyielding. "We will assist in securing the hyperspace corridors and tracing every unauthorized beacon. That means access to your internal registry and station traffic logs. Without them, we're hunting shadows." Several delegates shifted uncomfortably. Granting that level of access was unprecedented. But the Vorak threat, coupled with the evidence on display, made outright refusal politically dangerous. After a tense pause, Vorus nodded once. "Very well. The humans will have provisional clearance." The vote that followed was razor-thin, but it passed. Hours later, in the Resolute's secure operations room, Vance, Reyes, and a small team of analysts pored over streams of raw data pouring in from the Council's systems. It was messy, years of bureaucratic layering turning even simple manifests into labyrinths of code. Reyes tapped a flashing segment on her console. "Here, 2 beacon shipments logged as maintenance supplies for a deep space comm array. But the comm array doesn't exist. It was dismantled 8 years ago." Vance leaned over. "Destination? Outer docking ring. 3 levels below the Council's diplomatic quarters. The implications settled over the room like frost. Whoever was behind this wasn't just working inside the Council's network. They were operating almost in its heart." Vance straightened. "Seal the data. No external transmissions. If they know we're onto them, they'll vanish before we close the net." Reyes gave a thin smile. "Understood. But if they're that close, they're already watching us." Her words proved prophetic. Less than an hour later, the Resolute's long-range sensors picked up faint fluctuations in the orbital ship lanes, not large enough to be traffic, not random enough to be natural drift. It was the same cloaking signature used by the Vorak raiders. "They're here," Hale reported, his voice low. "Inside the capital's own defense perimeter." Vance turned to Reyes. "Then the breach isn't coming. It's already happened." The alarm didn't blare. It whispered. A soft tone, almost polite, sounding through the Resolute's bridge. But Admiral Vance knew better than to trust the volume. Hale's face confirmed it. "Signature confirmed," Hale said. "Multiple contacts. Cloaked. Inside orbital lane Delta 7. Delta 7 was restricted space, a corridor reserved for capital defense ships. No one should have been there without clearance, certainly not a fleet. "Drop cloak filters," Vance ordered. "Let's see them." The hollow display shifted, ghostly outlines sharpening into the angular hulls of Vorak warships. They were anchored like hunters waiting for prey, their positioning too precise to be chance. "They've been here for hours," Reyes murmured, studying the feed. "Maybe days. Probably waiting for the Council fleet to disperse after session," Vance said. "They'd hit the station when it's light on defenders." Reyes's jaw tightened. "Except we're here now." On the Council station, the emergency assembly chamber was already filling with delegates and guards. When Vance strode in, his appearance without an escort was enough to make Voris rise from his seat. "What is the meaning of—" the speaker began, but Vance cut him off by projecting the sensor data into the air. "Multiple Vorak ships," Vance said flatly. "Inside. Your own restricted defense zone. Coordinates and scans are live." Gasps broke out. Some delegates craned to see the projections, others immediately tapped their personal comms, no doubt to confirm with their own fleets. Voris's eyes narrowed. "This is impossible. That sector is monitored by people who've been feeding them access," Reyes interrupted from the doorway. "You've been breached from the inside, and they were ready to strike while you debated trade tariffs." The bluntness stung, but it worked. Panic edged into urgency. Minister Lorash stepped forward. "What do you suggest, Admiral?" Vance didn't hesitate. "Lock down all station traffic, evacuate non-essential personnel, and let my fleet engage." That last point stirred immediate protest. Granting an outsider military authority inside Council space was unheard of. But every second wasted meant the Vorak ships had more time to choose the moment to strike. Finally, Voris nodded. The decision waited by necessity. "You have limited operational clearance. Make it count." Minutes later, the Resolute led the formation. From orbit, the 1,000-strong human fleet shifted into a spearhead. Ships glinted in the system's pale light, their drives burning steady as they moved to encircle Delta 7. The Vorak reacted fast. Cloaks dropped, weapons lit, and suddenly the quiet orbital lanes were filled with the hum of targeting locks and the flash of maneuvering thrusters. "Contact on all fronts," Hale reported. "They're splitting, half heading for the station." Vance's voice was steel. "Then we split too. Reyes, you've got intercept. I'll take the flank." The battle unfolded like a storm given shape. Human destroyers intercepted the lead Vorak ships before they could cross into weapons range of the station. Pulse cannons lit the void, streaks of blue and gold tearing through the dark. The Vorak fought hard, but the humans pressed them with a precision that left no gap unexploited. On the station's viewing deck, delegates stood frozen as the battle played out on massive screens. Some whispered disbelief, others awe. Few had ever seen humans in open combat, and fewer still had expected such discipline and coordination. Within 20 minutes, the Vorak formation was broken, 4 ships destroyed, 3 crippled, the rest scattering for deep space. Not a single human ship was lost. Later in the council chamber, Vance stood beside Reyes as Voris addressed the assembly. Today, the speaker began slowly. "We witnessed not only an attack upon our very heart, but also the resolve of a species we have too long left outside our trust." The chamber was silent. Voris continued, Earth's fleet has saved this station and perhaps this council. From this day forward, humanity will have a permanent seat among us." A murmur spread. Surprise, some resistance, but mostly acceptance. Vance inclined his head slightly. "We didn't come here to be your saviors. We came to be your equals. Don't forget that." Reyes allowed herself the smallest smile. The 1,000 ships in orbit had made their point without a word, and the galaxy had listened. Far above, the human fleet held position, silent sentinels against the dark. The Council knew they would eventually return to their own stars, but the memory of their arrival and the day they stood between the galaxy and destruction would not fade.